ourselves as we go around the room. Good evening, I'm Tom Riome, and I'll call the meeting of the Public Works Committee to order here at 6 p.m. It's Tuesday, November 7th. We're in the first floor conference room at City Hall. We'll go around the room here.
Steve Coth, Alderman.
Scott Keller, Alderman.
Chad Bogart.
Paul Shabilsky, City Clerk.
Joe Eggstead, City Engineer.
Joe Terry, Director of Public Works.
Matt Kubiszak, Alderperson.
Thank you. Item number 2 is review the DPW report.
Thank you. I passed out your Public Works report for the activities for the month of October. I did want to mention that we had planned on doing a field trip this evening, but because of the conflict with the Property and Finance Committee, it was decided to postpone that item. I would like to try to reschedule that. I know with some schedules it can be really difficult, but with the daylight hours being earlier, we really would need to try to do that field trip sometime before dark in order to accomplish things. And my objective is to take a look at our projects that we've completed this year or that are being completed this year, and take a look at the projects that are proposed for next year in both our capital plan and the budget proposal. So if we have any, we can follow up after the meeting at your wishes, but I'd like to try to do that fairly soon because we are finalizing the budget, and just wanted to make sure you had a chance to see those projects firsthand. A couple key items I'd like to just point out. Again, with the report, we'll get this published on the city's website. With the airport, a long-term project of the tree obstruction removal is nearly complete. Phase 1 and 2 is complete, and Phase 3 is underway with completion expected by December 1st. With buildings and grounds, one item I'd like to highlight is a number of our bathroom groups have had some interior painting and some maintenance activity work. The street department had an LTE position that it was unable to fill during the year, and in discussing what some of our needs are in the fall and early winter season, we were able to hire an LTE with a background in forestry, graduate from Mid-State Tech, and so that person is going to be aiding the Public Works and Parks group with urban forestry type activities and some park maintenance type activities. So we're pleased to have refreshed some of those with just some paint and general improvements. Engineering department, we ran some high accuracy level loops on the east side of the river, and they're working on completing these loops on the west side. This is an important project that sometimes gets put off because there's other priority items. The city was able to rent a piece of new technology to aid in that process, and it's been going very well. With our streets division, our first street project from Poplar up to the city limits is the street portion of the project is complete. The restoration on the home sides is complete. The river trail, multi-use trail, is still underway, and we'll be continuing that work throughout the fall. I wanted to just quickly try to point out some of the technology that we're using. The city staff has been working on routine street patching. We use 3 different work groups for that. There's essentially a 1 or 2 person team that does the preliminary saw cut. There's a couple person team that does the removal of asphalt where we have an asphalt patch that, a street that needs to be patched. We have a couple person group that follows them, getting hot mix into that patch. And then in most cases we have our flagmen, our sign personnel, as a 1 person team to collect the traffic control at the end of the project. Coordinating when you've got 4 teams out in the field can be challenging. With equipment running, you're not necessarily hearing everything that's going on, trying to keep track of what's cut, what isn't, what's ready for asphalt, where are we at. And so our GIS staff developed this web app, so to speak, and it allows staff in the field to identify and do a work order on a location. I'm just going to zoom in on one. The star turns red when the work order is done, but no work has been done yet. The cutting staff goes out and identifies it. When they're complete with their work, they re-identify the work order as now that it's ready for removal. It changes the color of that star to gold, so that next crew can just look at the map and follow through. When that crew's done with their work, they have an iPad in the truck. They identify that patch now is green. It's ready for pavement. So the next crew following through does the asphalt work. When they're done with their work, they identify it as ready for traffic control removal, in which case then the star turns blue, which is something that we added. And at the end of the day, when our Public Works Superintendent is satisfied that the project is complete to satisfaction, he indicates that the patchwork is complete. So for example, I'm going to touch on this green star. This is before we had the traffic control removal section. You can see on the box that opens, we were able to kind of automate this, that with length and width measured in the field staff measures it, inputs that information and the depth. The software then calculates the area of the patch and calculates how many tons of asphalt are needed. So the person doing the asphalt work can look ahead and see that, boy, I can get 5 more patches in before the end of the day. I can do these patches, and I can look and see how many tons of material that I need to order from, in this case, we're using Wood County to supply our asphalt. So it's been a very efficient tool, and we've had some growing pains with staff getting used to this type of technology in the field. But we're really pleased with how it's working, how it really aids, instead of having a list and having staff running all over town.
Yeah.
We can kind of create a workflow that's much more efficient. We're looking at using the same type of model for doing sidewalk work and the follow-up renovation that's required behind sidewalks.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Curb and gutter, catch basins, things like that. If we have a catch basin repair, similarly, if we identify that it needs now curb and gutter and then some restoration or asphalt concrete topsoil restoration, we're using this technology to assist us. This map actually looks a little different for me than it does for the other staff, because with the generic version of this map, once the patch is marked complete, it disappears from this map. So there's no clutter on it for staff in the field. They only see, like for example, you can see right now there's one red patch that hasn't been cut yet, and what is there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 patches that are ready to be removed, and once that's done, Onyx. The rest of those for staff in the field would not see that. We did focus our work on kind of the northeast portion of the city this year. We'll be focusing our work on the west side of the city, probably northwest portion of the city next year. And our objective is to utilize this technology to aid in catch basin maintenance, street maintenance, so that we can perform hopefully all these types of things in one area, follow up with a chip seal a year or two later, and essentially be able to walk away from that part of the city for maybe 6 years and not have to worry about general routine maintenance, just trying to be more productive. So I'm really pleased with how it's working so far. A couple other things real quick. Wastewater plant staff, we finally have, and it's not a done deal yet, but you probably recollect we've been talking for several years about being able to properly dispose of our Class A exceptional quality sludge as Class A exceptional quality sludge. We've been waiting for years on a DNR permit. I've calculated now the city has spent almost $2 million in depreciation and actual costs because they haven't updated the permit to allow us to dispose of it as it should be allowed. With some persistence and maybe a little bit of nagging and trying to contact the right people. We do have a variance and are able at least to land apply that directly on the surface on fields that we wouldn't normally otherwise have been able to do that. Our wastewater superintendent is estimating that alone just this fall is going to save the utility almost $15,000. So I'm proud of that effort. And I guess the last thing I wanted to point out is that we are very close to finalizing our updated industrial user contract with Mariani Packaging. And that's been something that's been in the works for a couple of years. So we're real close. Expect to see that on the agenda for the city council meeting.
Thank you. Any questions by anybody? Comments? Okay, item number 3. Request from Chad Borgwat to install angled parking along 2nd Street South in the area of 521 2nd Street South. Chad, I guess, do you want to
Well,
describe a little bit, I guess, what you're asking for?
we've got a parking issue. There's cars on the street on both sides of the street pretty much most of the day, and it's a narrow street. And I recently purchased that building in August, and when I bought it there were 8 vacancies. And for many years they haven't had a very up-to-date management team, so they haven't had they've never had it full for 15 plus years. 28 units, 27 parking stalls in the garage. A couple tenants have 2 vehicles. I'm trying to rent to a couple people that don't have cars, so then we don't need an extra stall for them. But as I fill it up, more people are having to park on the street, and especially in the summertime with visitors, there's a lot more parking on the street than there is even the last few days. But we just have a parking issue. And then when cars are on both sides of the street, the street is narrow enough. If there's 2 cars coming head on, one usually waits for the other one to come through the cars that are parked, and then the other one will go. And it seems like every time I go to my truck for tools, there's 3 or 4 cars waiting for me, but that's just me. So, yeah, it's an issue. So I think if we had angled parking on my side in front of the building, if we put 8 or 10 cars there, whatever we can do, I think that would take the congestion off the street and make it safer.
I guess for those watching us on TV, this is in front of the old Conway building. I've written the name that you renamed it, but that's what we're talking. So. Joe, do you have anything?
Yeah, so just a few other points to add to that. The street is only 34 feet wide, and there are currently no parking restrictions out there, so you could park on both sides of the street, although it's not quite sufficient to our standards for two-way traffic and parking on both sides. So on-street parking is something that the city has in various areas. It is called out in our ordinance as a separate ordinance section. I think in past precedents would be that in those areas the property owner had paid for that angle parking under the permit approval of the city. Another option might be is to put parking restrictions on one side of the street, and although with alternate side parking that doesn't help in overnight hours, but that would be another option. But yeah, so just a little bit of background there.
How many stalls are you thinking of? You said 8, I think.
Whatever, it depends on the angle. We would park
Yeah.
on 2. The property is 100 feet, and we got to stay a little bit off the corner, and then there's a guy wire coming down on the south side, we'll call it.
And there's really no property, well, there's property, but home south of your,
Right. But there's a telephone pole or utility pole and a guy wire coming down to my direction on that corner, real near to the corner on the south side.
Just a note, Chad has done tremendous with that building. I mean, the trees, the trimming, the front, the painting, the cosmetic, and I talked to him on the phone, but inside, new carpeting, everything. I mean, he's really, we talk about entrepreneurs, and we talk about improving, we talk about apartments downtown and so forth. He's done an ideal job, and we need to give him, and the city needs to give entrepreneurs such as that credit for what they're putting in on their own. So, thanks.
And there's no room to provide ankle parking off of Witter next to the driveway.
There's a very steep bank there.
Right.
There's no parking on that side of the street.
At all, anyway.
Right.
Because the street's narrow.
Yeah, the street's narrow. Where you at? Is that a 24-foot street, maybe?
Maybe.
So, yeah.
Yeah, the only concern I had about the angle parking is to make sure that, or to have as a condition of approval, that it's deep enough so that the cars are well out of the travel lane. The last thing we want to do is have the cars getting tagged by traffic coming through or whatever. But otherwise, I didn't have any.
Yeah, the only other things, like the other utilities, power poles, vision triangles, just making sure that it's the parked vehicles, once they would be there, that they meet all of the current ordinances and safety requirements of having vehicles in the right of way. So, but otherwise, there wasn't any other concerns with having angle parking there.
How much roadway would be left, Joe, if you had angle parking?
The idea would hopefully be that you could fit it in the boulevard, the rest of the right of way behind the curb that's left. And I don't know if that means some of that parking would need to be on private property or not at this point, but it would be close. It'd be close to fitting so that the trunks of the vehicle aren't hanging out into the street.
There's angle parking, there's angle parking, the degree of the angle parking too.
Yeah, right, so there's a compromise there. So if
Yeah.
you're trying to keep the car out of the street and you have it at a steep angle, your effective stall width down the street's very wide, and so you can't get very many cars parked in there. The closer you can get it to perpendicular,
The better.
the narrower the effective length of the width of the stall is, but it sticks out farther, right? So it's finding the right mix that's gonna allow those cars to fit, and still allow for a reasonable number of angle spots.
I thought I went upstairs and we looked at some stuff on the GIS, and I thought we were really close to what was right up the street, right? Just the opposite side by the
Right.
Elks building.
Yep.
So
Yeah,
whatever that
real
width
close.
was, I thought we were fine even at the property line, at the right of way.
Well, that's good.
Yep.
So I guess we would entertain a motion to approve the request contingent upon, meeting the engineer's expectations for.
Being able to fit them in or somehow make it work then.
I'll make the motion to install the angle parking along 2nd Street in the area of 521 2nd Street South, based on the contingency with the engineering department.
I'll second.
Any questions on,
And just to be clear, that's at the owner's expense, correct?
I don't know, this goes back to my comment about all the things he's done. How much would that cost, approximately?
We haven't
You wouldn't know.
We haven't prepared that. That'd be atypical for the city to
Atypical. to
provide
do
that, right?
Well, if that's a practice, then I guess should honor the practice if other people have done that.
Right.
So, yeah, at the owner's expense.
Okay.
Chad, did you have something?
Yeah, I won't do it if I have to pay for all of it. I'd be willing to split some costs. But for me, there's not only benefit for me no benefit for my tenants to make it a little bit easier, But there's a lot of cars that travel on Second Street, they're gonna benefit from that too. You know, when I say people have to wait, if they're heading on, there's not room for 2 cars to travel with cars on each side now. So there's benefits to the public too, besides just me or my tenants.
I would,
The curb is not in good condition already, you know, so that's,
I would disagree that there isn't enough room to pass. I mean, you can see from the picture, there's cars parked on both sides, and there's still, you know, there's still room to get 2 cars through. We have other streets in the city that are as narrow as this.
2 cars can probably fit through safely, you know, that's
Right.
just, you know, you're not gonna expect the cars to be a foot apart when they're traveling 25 or 30 miles an
Yeah.
hour. You know, so in general, my
Yeah.
experience been there, cars will not pass
Sure.
together, they will wait, which is a good thing,
Yeah.
you know, I mean,
I think the slippery slope, though, is that, you know, the city isn't in a practice of providing private parking for anyone. You know, there's some paid public parking lots, you know, permit lots, things like that, but, you know, I think that it'd be challenging. First of all, there's no budget for it. But second of all, it's the precedent set that, you know, for good reason, you know, we certainly don't want to, you know, suggest that the work you've done isn't fantastic. To see that facility improve the way it has, and to see it full of tenants is an excellent thing. But I think we need to be careful as far as, you know, what we're providing the public for our public street system. And it's just
That isn't for, his tenants will park there, but it's not necessarily for his tenants. What I'm saying is that anybody could park there. You know what I'm saying? And then also as we do the riverfront, there'll be more, we hope, more cars going down there as a destination we talked about. So that'll be even advantageous for public parking. So, I mean, I don't see it as his private parking, you know.
well, I guess what I'm getting at is that it is not typical for the city to provide at city taxpayer cost, you know. I mean, the city has an ordinance for how its local streets are designed and paved. There's, you know, private driveway entrances that are paid for by the property owner. The city, that gets assessed to property owners. The city doesn't, on a construction project, the private entrances aren't a gift from the
at a
taxpayer.
portion. Owners pay a portion, right?
Not for the driveways. If their driveway's defective, I mean that the concrete's in poor shape, they would pay for the entire replacement.
For the
of
approaches.
driveway. Right, yep. Sidewalks 100%, curb and gutter and street pavement are subsidized. The city pays a portion, property owners pay a portion.
Property owners pay 20%.
They pay 20% for pavement surface.
Curb and gutter,
Curb and gutter was a 2/3, 1/3 split.
property owners pay 2/3? Or 1/3?
I think it's 1/3.
Okay.
Your motion hold, or what do you want to do?
I don't know,
The motion on the floor is that you move that to approve the request to install angle parking along Second Street South in the area of 521 Second Street South at the owner's, I put the owner's name Chad, I don't want to butcher your last name, expense, so at the owner's expense, contingent upon meeting the specifications of the city engineer. That's what I have for my motion.
you have a thought?
Well, he said the curb's in disrepair, but the city at least be willing to remove the curb to help him out. Can we-
Under our current ordinance, I mean, generally the project, if it's a reconstruction project, the curb would be removed, but it's, I don't think is it in disrepair such that it would normally be on Rich's list to take out?
I haven't seen it on an inspection list yet, but I haven't looked at the curbs specifically.
Been there for a long time, so
Yeah.
one could assume, I know it's assumption,
Right.
but over that length of time. Could we, I think we're in favor, my opinion, we're in favor of the angled parking. The issue I think we have is the cost. So maybe if we, knowing that the census might be that we want angled parking, but the cost is a variable, maybe we should table this and see what the cost is for the next month. And then we could look at the cost as to what the merit of that would be. You know, food for thought. I don't know.
I guess
Guess I can
typically,
understand.
again, typically if a business is going to put in a driveway, you know, the city engineering department wouldn't do the cost analysis of what it costs to cut out the curb, replace the curb. I mean, if you were going to redo your driveway because it needed it, or if it was narrow and you want to widen it, I mean, you as a property owner would do that under the conditions.
It's yours.
Right, it's yours. You know, here really the request is to do something that's different, which is the angled parking. You know, I guess I would remiss my duties to suggest that, you know, that we would do anything other than what any other business or resident would have to do if they were putting in a driveway. You know, to subsidize a project like this is just not, it's not typical.
So residents can tell people not to park in their driveway because they pay for it, because it's theirs? I mean, what I'm getting at, could I then put signs up that says nobody else could park there?
On your private
if I
property?
paid for it? So in your example, resident pays for their driveway. The
Correct.
approach,
Yes.
100%. So can anybody park on anybody's driveway approach?
So generally, the driveway approach is an access, it's a private entrance through public property.
Right.
So it's really the city granting sort of an easement for access. And so, no, you wouldn't be able to say, if you paid for that angled parking, to say it's for my tenants only, because it is public right of way.
Okay. But property owners can do that with their own driveway though, right?
If it's on private property, you could disallow someone from parking in your driveway. Sure, it's your property.
I
We're
think
not
that's
on the
a
same page.
key difference here is that there isn't private property to put the parking on. It's utilizing the public right-of-way for private parking. Although, you know, there may be a couple more spots open if some public wanted to use it from time to time. But at this point, they could also use the street, so.
Right, like for example, in the downtown area, there's angled parking in front of a number of the business there. They through the assessment process, it's different because it's a commercial use in a business district, but they can't put up a no parking sign or a customer parking only sign. We run into some trouble right now with that because employees of the county will park and take up valuable retail space for a short period of time, but the parking that exists in the public right-of-way, the adjacent private property owners, albeit maybe have paid in part or in full for it, don't have control over it. It's.
I guess that would be another way to look at it, that if that angle parking were permit parking.
Right, if it were permit parking, then potentially,
They would be the only ones being able to park there.
right,
And that would satisfy his tenants then.
as long as there's actually interest in purchasing a permit. Which is what, $60 a year?
156.
156. I mean, if the city went through the budget process to allocate funds for it to be permit parking, and the residents decided, well, I'm not paying $156 to park there, I'm gonna park on the next block on the street because it's free.
Yeah, so somebody has to pay for it
Then
up
there's-
front to start with.
Right, then there's no way for the city to recoup its investment.
I just would be curious, and I understand the idea of estimates, but, you know, people in the field knowing, and, you know, they replace curbs, and there's so many feet of curb, and the distance, or whatever it is, when could it come up with a ballpark figure, so we know?
So this project's gonna be a bit unique because there's an outwalk with some steps that is probably gonna have to be modified in order to accommodate cars parking there.
Those steps are actually 2 feet into the property line.
Sure.
When we were talking before, we thought we could do it with just the property line, right?
Yeah, it's gonna be close.
Yeah.
but-
So we may not have to worry about the steps. So if we take the steps out, would we have 100 feet of curb? If we're 80 wide, 10 deep on each side?
Yeah, I would just.
And how much is
assume
curb?
The whole lot, $15 a foot.
Okay, so we're at 1,500. We gotta, we'll have another 80 of lip curb, or whatever you wanna call it, gutter curb.
Same price.
So there's $2,700 in curb. In pavement, any idea? Square foot, because we'd be at 800 square feet, right? Of our, we've been 1,000 square feet maybe. $3 a foot, 5?
Well, I know concrete prices, so yeah, if you use a concrete price, it'd be about $5 a foot.
So there's 5,000, what, 2,700, so $7,700. Plus some excavating and removal, I guess. Just very rough figures.
I'd like to suggest that we could do it, but we have
I-
no budget
I
for
had
it, and we have no
idea.
policy
I
for
had no
it.
idea how much it would cost.
Well, how about if we just go ahead and right now let it stand with giving him permission to do the angle parking, but then if you decide that's at least a starting point to get the angle parking approved, and then go from there on a different route to see what can be done past that. I think if the city has a project coming up in that area, if there is something that comes up in that area, if the city decides to do work there and they're gonna take out that curb, we could certainly work with Chad and let him know and say that we got a project coming up there, we're gonna take the curb out. That would save him the expense of having to work with the curb and gutter. And in the meantime, if he wasn't able to necessarily get asphalt or concrete in there, would it be permissible for him to have that boulevard excavated, put gravel down, and use gravel for parking surface until such a time he would be able to put asphalt or concrete down on there?
That would have to be a special exception from the current ordinance.
I don't know, does the ordinance allow for a special exception on that? I don't think it does.
I mean, council
Okay.
wanted to.
But nonetheless, maybe just go through with the motion to allow for the angle parking to go there, and then just tackle the other part of it later on.
When people have requested angle parking before, has it just been for businesses, any residences, apartment buildings?
The one that I'm most familiar with is the Northern Steel Castings on Goggins Street. And that was part of a road reconstruction project, and they wanted angle parking put in. And and they agreed to pay the special assessment charges for that, which was 100% of the cost. And we brought it before the committee and council for,
So that was a business
Addition to the
situation.
ordinance.
Do you guys consider my park building a business? Is that considered a business?
I would think
Or
so.
residential?
Yeah, it's a business, it's a residentially zoned property, but it's a business endeavor.
Okay.
Well, with the
That I
river,
maybe have reservations with, but that's fine. Northern Steel Castings, they didn't put a second curb in, did they? They just had a lip curb and then the elevation just went into their sidewalk.
Theirs
Is
was
that right?
theirs was all concrete, Eagle parking, so it was.
There was no second curb, or you don't mean a curb at the property line?
Yeah, and I don't remember how that, where the property line was in relationship to the end of the parking. It might have been onto their own property at that point.
It's a little different situation again.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah. So we,
Reject curb back to the flow line.
So yeah, there was like a driveway curb, and then I think what you're
It just
referring
went
to is
to
it
the
just
sidewalk.
went all the way.
to the building,
Oh,
really.
okay.
It was just solid concrete from the lip curb or from the gutter to the building.
So they didn't have a parking stop, essentially a curb to act as a
Right.
parking stop,
Right.
okay. The building is the,
Yep.
Right.
okay.
No lines on the parking area, nothing specific.
Okay.
Any other cases? I mean, there's,
Nothing recent.
we have precedents,
that
but nothing comparable.
nothing real recent that I'm familiar with. But there are plenty of other angle parking locations. Yeah, just none that I had been directly involved with.
I don't think at Northern Steel, they had the issue with cars parked on each side of the road and as much traffic, nearly as much traffic as I would have in front of on Second Street.
with the riverfront, we talked about that and the change. This is gonna be a pathway, a path and so forth. Is there any plans with regard to that road, the Second Street, with regard to any, I hate to see all of a sudden changes are made and then, oh, we're changing the street and we could have done it at the same time, or even delaying it for a year or so. At least it's advantageous for Chad.
Yeah, we don't have anything on Second Street in the
Scheduled there.
5-year capital plan at this point.
I can tell you the snow plowers would probably like to have some angled parking there and get those cars off the street.
Well, it's
I know
all
some of those
side
guys.
parking.
It's alternate side parking in the winter, because otherwise they'll just plow the
But
cars
not
in.
during the day, I mean, but see, the reason the curb is not very good, because you can see the curb is better further south, but right in front of the building where the snow plows have to go around cars during the day, you'll see where the plows hit the curb and just smash it up. So that's why plowers don't like cars, because they gotta come out and they try to judge it, and you just, that wing is out there a long ways, and that plow is out there, and he's perfect, and you hit the curb, it is what it is.
Your motion is still on the floor.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Well, I'll amend the motion at the cost of the owner, but keep the motion that we do angle parking.
Okay.
And then, I guess it's at a later determination as to what's gonna happen, cost and so forth,
Second.
you know? Because if there hasn't, you know, if this is gonna set precedent, you know, for future, that's gonna be a problem. So, and I think you're estimating about 10,000.
Yeah, I would say up to that, yeah. Based on that rough calculation.
So is this approving with the cost borne by the owner?
Yeah, I guess at this time it would be that way.
Is that setting a precedent, or?
No, if the cost is borne by the owner, there's no precedent set. It'd be consistent with our
Okay.
ordinances. The city's allowing a deviation of use of the public right-of-way, with cause here, and at no additional cost to the taxpayer.
Okay. All right, if there's nothing else, committee will vote. All those in favor respond by aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. There.
Won't get done. So I mean, it's what it is. Yep.
Item number 4. Consider removing lot corner marking from the list of engineering services.
Okay, so this comes out of just an internal audit for our property iron locates. It is a service that the city has provided for some time now. I don't know how long the city has provided it. Typically, in a typical year, we get about 56 of them that come in. The fee for the service is $50. Doesn't matter, you know, if they're if it's a small lot or a big lot, if they have 4 corners or more than 4 corners. So it includes processing the request, finding any of the necessary data, the maps, records to go out and utilize those resources while they're searching for them. And then, you know, typically it's a 2-man crew, sometimes just a 1-person crew, depending on the locate in the time of year, because they'll come in even all winter long, which can be a bit more challenging digging through snow and ice. So the time estimate, it's a bit hard. It does vary, but anywhere between 2 and 4 hours per locate, all staff time wrapped up together. So the typical year revenue for that fee, that service would be around $2,800. The actual cost of staff time performing that service is somewhere between $6,000 and $12,000. So that's really the disparity that comes in. And in addition, there's about a third of the requesters are realtors looking to have the property owners located as part of trying to sell the property and show the property. And the other 2/3 are property owners doing business on their property, which, you know, that's what the service is for. So it's just to bring it before the committee, show you the stuff that we've found with the audit, and then, you know, in part, it's always trying to just free up staff time and resources to work on priority projects, our public works reconstruction projects, and that sort of thing. But at least from the audit, it would appear that it's something that's very time consuming. Service that the engineering department provides, but just to see what the committee's thoughts were on foregoing that service. And
Joel? The other Joel.
So I wanted to mention that, so I had tasked department heads, because of the, you know, the issues with the ability to budget and increase the budget, or lack of ability to do that under the current constraints by the state. I find that, you know, departments are struggling, and it's becoming quite frustrating for staff. You know, sometimes the level of stress gets a little high trying to get done all the things that we expect that our staff do, and that's based on what the services that the city's been providing. So I've challenged the street department, parks, and engineering to all review and to identify any areas where it may be a valuable service, but only to a small select group, and if it's time consuming but expensive. And so from the engineering department, this was one of the things that came forward. You know, one of the challenges that I'm seeing in the engineering department, and we've addressed it as kind of a one-time fix, is the ability to get our priority projects done, to get our public works construction plans prepared those projects surveyed, the technical work done, and get those plans out to our field staff well in advance of the project, so there can be some discussion on construction methods, obtaining materials, things like that. And I've witnessed staff working diligently to try to accomplish that goal, but just not being able to do it. So for 2018, if you'll recollect, we've hired a consulting engineer to assist with our 2018 projects, where our staff's designing 2019 projects. So we're trying to get ahead, but there has to be some, without the ability to alter staff with the variety of projects that we have coming up, we really need to be able to focus on those duties. That's high value work that the engineering staff can do for the city versus relatively low value work that benefits a very select amount of public. So I just want to give you a little background of why you're seeing this on the agenda.
Yeah, and I'm not sure how long we've done this. It's been quite a while, I think. It's been a benefit to the community. The size of our workforce has gone down and down and down. So it's becoming tighter and tighter, shrinking that, and we're looking at fewer and fewer dollars and fewer people. So it's it's becoming harder and harder to keep squeezing dollars and people to perform the work, and I think that this is one of the ones that show that. I think, unfortunately, it shows it, but unfortunately, it's one of those I think that we do have to go along with to do.
Mr. Chairperson, if I may.
Yeah.
At first glance, when I had seen this on the agenda, I was a little concerned because obviously I'm a homeowner and I'm a property owner, and having a service that the city can provide at a reasonable rate to be able to do this is wonderful, instead of hiring a certified land surveyor. On the other hand, now hearing that 2/3 of the requests come from realtors who are engaged in commercial practice, that's kind of discouraging. And I think that it also should be pointed out that this is not an end-all. This isn't a certified survey map that's being created. You guys are just locating the iron. Someone could have moved that iron, and you're just going in generality. So this isn't something that's going to solve a neighbor dispute. Hiring a certified surveyor is going to solve that neighbor dispute. So I think that we're almost kind of creating, by locating irons, we're in certain situations, we're creating an unrealistic expectation of what the end is, what we're trying to solve. So unfortunately, sometimes it does cost a little bit of money to do that, but at least if you hire a surveyor for the purpose of locating irons and locating where your property boundary is, if there is a neighbor dispute, then once the certified survey map is created, then that's gospel. So, I mean, with this, I think that if we had a money tree, it would be wonderful if we could provide those services, but we're giving a broken service to our residents, unfortunately.
Just for clarification, about 1/3 of the survey requests are for one-third. And the other possible recommendation could have been that we alter the fee so that it is not a subsidized service, but because of the lack of staff able to perform some of these responsibilities, that's why that wasn't recommended in this particular case. If we had more time or we had a little bit of staff, I think adjusting the rate so that it's representative or at least close. Still, if it were even $300, it'd be a little less than half of what it would cost to have a certified server come out on site. That also might reduce the number of inquiries that, well, for $50 I'll do it, but I'm not going to do it for $300. But like I said, the issue right now is just being able to assign those responsibilities, those high-level responsibilities to staff, and we wanted the committee to review it, and we want to just suggest that we're going to discontinue the service without discussion and council review and committee review.
Well, I guess, you know, from what I said before, I think it's something we should do. That we're at that point of, it's not a lot of money, but, you know, we're getting to that point on a lot of things of, items like that that we have to do in cases like this. I would make the motion to consider, but I'd make a motion to go along with it, that removing lot corner, whatever.
Maybe to forego providing the lot corner location service.
There you go.
I'll second.
Yeah, I think with budget cuts, I mean, you know, people are concerned about their taxes and everything else, and there's more tasks that the engineers have to do, like with the riverfront and others. It just, you can't do it all.
Any further discussion? Any will vote, all in favor, respond by aye.
Aye.
Ayes have it. Number 5, consider real estate consultant proposals for acquisition and negotiation services for the East Grand Avenue project from 3rd Street to 8th Street.
So this will be fairly short. We sent it out to four firms that we're familiar with and have done work with the city in the past on various projects. At this point, all 4 firms have declined to submit a proposal. So as of this morning, it was yesterday and this morning, it was calling around to the firms, trying to get a little bit better understanding. You know, and it came down to staff resources and timing, that they have current projects that they're working on, and then they just can't staff this additional project. However, I did make some additional calls and sent some emails out to a whole host of other certified real estate consultants across the state. So, with the hope of bringing something back, at least for council, so that we keep moving with the project. Because the time frame is ticking. The way the state process works with these projects is it's a hurry up and wait process. So now it's hurry up and get the real estate started. So that's what. But for tonight, there isn't any proposals to review. So
It is quick.
yeah.
All right. I guess, when do you think we'd be able to, or whatever, put something out?
So it's out to the other firms.
It is.
I'm hoping to have something back.
Oh, it is out.
For the council meeting. So if we need to hold a special public works meeting just before council to take up that item, that's what it's being prepared for anyway at this point.
Okay. Item 6, review proposed changes to assessment procedures and consider ordinance and policy revisions.
So as a little background, the proposed language allows the city to notify the public of its intent to levy special assessments, but have the assessment hearing after the project is complete. So actual costs can be assessed rather than estimates. And this proposal will also help reduce kind of the design by committee situations that we tend to see when we have the public hearing. There tends to be some confusion, I think, by literally everybody involved, what that public hearing is really for. And so, you know, it's supposed to be to review the assessment and determine if the assessments are appropriate or if they're not appropriate. It's not supposed to be to design the project. And so, in my previous employment, I found that this method works very well. I'll go through a little bit of the details on it here as far as what's proposed. So there's three portions. One portion is the ordinance itself. And I've proposed to revise section 2.14, public construction by the city. Previously, 2.14 had one item, and that is that the city can do its own construction. What's being proposed here under item 2, the special assessment procedures as defined. This is language that came from the League of Wisconsin Municipalities. It's their recommendation that this language be as it is in order to accomplish exactly what we're trying to accomplish. And the crux of it is item C. The provisions of statute 66.0703 shall apply to special assessments levied under this ordinance, except that when a governing body determines by resolution that the hearing on assessments be held subsequent to the completion of the work or improvement or the rendering of service, the report required by statutes shall contain a statement of the final cost of the work, service, or improvement in lieu of an estimate of the cost. And so, right now, we have a special meeting to set the assessment rates. Those rates are, based on past practice, past projects. It may result in some subsidy. It may result in some, potentially shortcomings for the city, depending on how those numbers are calculated. This will allow the city to come up with an exact number that can be defended by the construction documents. So that's the first portion. I think what I'll do is I'll roll through these, and then we can, I think, make motions potentially for them individually, because I think that's what the council is going to want to see is individually. The second part is the policy, the special assessment policy and procedures. This policy currently exists and is just modified to indicate that the engineering department will notify the public. They'll give the public an estimate still of what the assessments are anticipated to cost, but that estimate will be increased by 20%. Essentially, it follows very similar to our assessment procedure now, but it's being identified as an estimate. Once the project is complete and the numbers are known, within 60 days after final assessment costs have been determined, an assessment hearing shall be scheduled by the Public Works Committee. Then we go through the regular notice procedure that we would normally do, and it defines then that the engineering department needs to send out then 10 days prior to that hearing the notice of assessment hearing, the assessment report, our currently frequently asked questions, and then a Public Works construction summary sheet that details the actual cost of the project. And then there's just some definitions to help staff review how assessments are calculated. These things exist in other portions of the ordinance. So that's the policy that we'll ask you to consider approving. The next item is an ordinance that's an amendment to 6.03 subparagraph 5 relating to procedures related to curb and gutter repairs. This was actually taken up by this committee and approved in, I believe, May, but we didn't actually have this formal language prepared, and so we need to have the council make the approval, I believe, of with this language as I understand it. Is that correct?
Yes.
So this is important because it's referenced in the policy, but in doing our homework, we discovered that we didn't prepare this language for council to approve it.
Yeah, they never got in front of council, is what happened. So.
Yeah. So the Public Works report was approved by council, but as an individual ordinance change.
The actual ordinance was not in front.
This last one is amendment of 5.03, subparagraph 2. The charges for water and sewer extension shall be based on actual installation costs. The previous version was a little lengthy, and again, it referenced previous projects, estimates, so on and so forth. So this shortens it up quite a bit. So I looked through the policy, and these were the ordinances that support the policy, or that policy supports these ordinances. And so through my research, we're recommending that these 3 ordinance changes take place and the 1 policy item take place. So we can back up and
Yeah, we can one at a time.
discuss
That would
them.
be the best.
The first would be the request to consider the replacing and recreating of section 2.14 to specify assessment procedures related to public construction projects.
So I guess, are there any questions?
Make a motion to approve language change in the notification of special assessments.
Second.
Okay,
Any questions?
just trying to get it down quick before we move on.
All caught up?
Yeah.
Committee, all those in favor respond by aye.
Aye.
Opposed, ayes have it.
So the next item is to request approval of the procedure for special assessments policy.
I'll make a motion to approve procedure for public assessment policy.
I'll second it.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, committee will vote. All those in favor respond by aye.
Aye.
Opposed, ayes have it. Next one.
The next item is a general ordinance of the City of Wisconsin Rapids repealing and recreating section 6.03 subpar 5 to modify assessment procedures related to curb and gutter repairs. And again, this is a return of a previous item that we've discussed and moved forward.
I'll make a motion to approve such language.
Second.
Motion and second to approve the payment of cost of assessments ordinance. Any further discussion? Hearing none, committee will vote. All those in favor respond by aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, ayes have it. And the last one.
The last one is a request to consider a motion to approve the general ordinance of the City of Wisconsin Rapids repealing and recreating section 5.03 subpar 2 to modify assessment procedures related to water and sewer extensions.
Make a motion to approve the revision to the assessment for water and sewer extensions.
Second. Any further discussion by anybody? Hearing none, committee will vote. All those in favor respond by aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, ayes have it. And that passes. And that gives us to the referral list, I guess.
We do have item number 24 on the referral list that I think we can remove, or did we already remove
We
that?
already did on mine here.
Okay.
Number 25.
We can remove item number 25
Yep.
and 26.
Yep. And then I got
And I
one.
believe 27, because that is ongoing and will be resolved by the Common Council meeting.
Hopefully, yeah. And then I got one to throw into the bucket.
Okay,
Tim Dolan gave me that. He had to go to back to work, I guess, so.
so we have a request to consider a stop sign on 15th Place at Rosewood.
I don't think he has a name on there or anything. We gave it to him. Somebody called him up.
Okay, so request to consider placing a stop sign.
Yeah, on 15th Place at Rosewood. There is no suggestion as far as what leg of the intersection they're looking for a stop sign on. that you're aware of?
Would it have to
No,
be at
he just gave me that,
Okay.
so that's all I got. I don't think he said it.
Key intersection, I can't even place where that is.
down in the south?
I think it's south.
Southeast corner,
Southeast
right?
corner of town.
Yeah, I think it's a
Almost
four-leg
like,
intersection that
Kind of behind Walmart there.
Yeah, it's like
Yeah, behind or something.
those woods are a lot of like houses, sort of retirement type houses.
Oh, that new development.
Yeah, they're
Yeah,
nice
that's what
houses.
it is.
Yeah, very nice house.
Okay, we
I have
have that added.
I have one. In 2015, we passed the motion of understanding, whatever, a cutting shrub on the west bank of the river.
Yep.
And I have a constituent over there that keeps calling about it, and
So that work does take place spring and fall.
Okay.
I have talked to the street department staff about that. That work is,
I looked at it today.
it's a priority.
Okay.
The policy doesn't mandate it, but it asks that it be a priority.
Right.
And we do try to fit it in to our work. The riverbank is trimmed generally spring and fall as far as that brushwork. There's some areas where they don't because of the hazards of the steepness of
Oh,
the
yeah.
grade, things like that.
Is it going to be trimmed this fall? I didn't notice it.
It hasn't been yet, but it will
Oh,
be.
okay.
It's on the work list.
At least
so-
I can pass that on.
Sure, yeah. So I don't know if that really needs to be a referral item. There is a policy in place.
No, but
And-
I wanted to bring it to your attention.
Yes, yep.
Okay, anything else? Otherwise, we're at number 8. Entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn?
All those in favor respond by aye.
Aye.
Aye. And that's it, we're adjourned. Committee, we're adjourned at 7:09.
Thank you.